Well, friends of Atando Libros, viajeros literarios, estamos el día de hoy con Alyson Richman, esta autora de bestsellers norteamericana que por segunda vez está con nosotros. Thank you so much, Alyson, to be here. We are so pleasure to have again with this meeting to talk about the new novel in Spanish, El Jardín Italiano. We enjoy your company and your books. We love a lot. Thanks, and Danny, thanks a lot.
It's my pleasure to join you again. I'm so happy that you have a new book in Spanish from me. So I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you very much. And we are going to start asking you about the motivation of this book. Queremos platicar un poquito acerca de la motivación sobre este libro. What do you want to write about this, the Italian garden, el jardín italiano? ¿Qué cosas te inspiraron para escribir este libro?
Well, I became inspired to write the Italian garden when I learned of someone whose father had fled during World War II from Hungary into Italy and had false papers with him. And when he arrived in Portofino, he was sure he was going to be discovered and arrested on the spot because he knew his papers were forged. And as he gave his papers over to the Nazi officer who was examining all the papers, out of the blue, this Italian man, this big barrel-chested Italian man cried, "Cousin, cousin, I've been waiting for you all week. Thank heavens you've come." He embraced this man, even though they did not know each other. And he took him back to his home on the cliffs of Portofino. And that evening, my friend's father said, "Why did you save me? You don't know me." And he said, "I come to the port every few weeks and I try and save the person who looks the most afraid." And so that sentence, "who looks the most afraid," was very intriguing to me, that two people who have never met can sense something between each other, and that their lives can become entwined at that moment. And so for me, the question of the Garden of Letters, what are the other forms of language that we have besides words that connect us? And that made me also think of music and how music connects us. But it really came from hearing that story. And for those of you who've read the book, I used that story for the first opening of the Italian garden. I changed it because I made the person at the port a woman, but this sense of the doctor sensing the fear and this sense that was not spoken, that these two people who did not speak between each other become connected.
Yeah, and to talk about the connections, you have another connection with another book of you. Can you tell us more about it? Tiene conexión con otro libro que ella ha escrito, este libro.
I'm not, do you mean another book? Which book are you referring to?
The Lovers of...
Okay. So in the Lost Wife, I mentioned to you, I think previously before we were speaking, that there was a woman who reached out to me after I wrote the book, who told me that she recognized her father's name in the novel, that he was a violinist. And I had put the violinist's name in the novel, Carl Froelich, because one of the survivors that I had spoken to told me when she was in Terezin that every night she heard the music of Carl Froelich playing outside her window, and that it transported her to someplace else. And so I put that in the book. I have my character Lenka listening to the music of Carl Froelich. But I assume that Carl Froelich had died because almost 90-something% of Jewish prisoners had perished during the World War II when they were imprisoned in concentration camps. And a few weeks after the book came out, I learned through an email that someone sent me that her father was in the book and that he survived and that he was a violinist who now, had who is a cellist. And I was working on the Garden of Letters, and I had Elodie being a cellist. And so I met with her, and she told me all about her father, but also about why she was drawn to the cello, what made her fall in love with the instrument. And I used that to create the character of Elodie in the book.
The characters encounter sometimes the writer, no, comes to the writer. That's a great coincidence. And then, Danny, if you want to ask something to Alyson, you may.
Yes, thank you, Alyson, for your book. It was a pleasure to read it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, so we have three questions. The first one is that you talk a lot about loss and letting go in the life of Elodie. Her dad, her friend, her music school, her first love, her cello. What's the driver of surviving that from the experiences you have heard and that motivated this book?
Well, I think when you're writing historical fiction, it's very important to make sure that you accurately portray what was happening at that time and not gloss over it and make it seem that there was no suffering or loss. But I think the inspiration we draw from others people's challenges during this time is that they never lose hope, that there's always light in darkness. Yes, there is suffering. Yes, there is death and loss, but there is also great resilience of the human spirit. And if you're a creative person, for example, Elodie with her cello playing, it gives us another sense of strength and purpose. And if you have a sense of purpose in your life, that also gives you, I think, a lot of courage to move on, even after so much suffering is around you. But I think the essence really is to portray accurately what was happening. So the story of Lena, what happens with her in the novel, is based on a true story of someone who was in the resistance and who would not give the information up. And that's brutality really happened to someone like that. And so Lena, that's a true story with the eyes. I don't know if everyone's read the book, so I don't want to be so specific about what happens to Lena, but that sort of brutality, even the story of the girl who's trying to flee with her family and she gets trapped in the wire. That story was told to me by someone who was in music school in Verona, of one of her classmates. So I feel it's my responsibility to sort of record those stories that are told to me by people who survived this time in history and share them with my readers, but also show beauty and also show light and the importance of love and family. That's also always important in my books.
Thank you. Angie, ¿podemos hacer otras preguntas?
Yeah. Be my guest.
So the second question, it's a little bit different, and this goes around your reference to the Little Prince. We wanted to understand what does that mean to you, and why bring it in this book, the Little Prince reference.
Well, it's interesting because I went to Italy 3 times for this book to interview women who were staffettas, who were messengers in the Italian resistance. And one of the women, who's in her 80s at the time, she's just passed away, she was the one who shared with me how important books were to them, and that they were reading so much to escape, for sort of, to escape what was happening around them, but also that messages were sent through books, which is what happens in the book, in my novel. But when I asked her what they were reading, she mentioned The Little Prince, and that it had been a very important book to her, and that it gave a sense of, again, one sense of purpose in life, and this sense of protecting what was important. There's that line in The Little Prince that you have to cherish your rose and take care of your rose. This sense, there was a real connection with that material, and so I put it in because it came from someone who shared that with me.
Okay.
And you talk about the Little Prince, about the responsible for another person, the kind of love, and sometimes when the people loves more work or money, than the people near, no?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting because they have a coincidence again. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was a soldier in the Second World War, and just like the Little Prince, disappeared in action, no, and was so sorry because I think that he was an incredible author that tell us the simple kind of things that we have to put more attention, no?
Yes.
The family, the love, and
Yes.
this phrase or chord that you put in the first page of your novel tells all the things that Elodie wants to share with the world and with her mother and with Luca, no?
Yes, absolutely. That's completely true.
Continue, please. Thank you.
Okay, this is our final question. My mom really liked the idea of Angel's room, where Elodie and Anna.
Elodie and Anna, not the same.
Que incluyera su historia. A ver, so yeah, so how did you reach this idea of Angel's room? Like to live, to share a life together, there has to be acceptance between of each other's path. So there we would just like maybe a little bit more.
So, you know, I don't write with an outline. So when I am writing, everything comes to me that day, and I build upon what I wrote the day before. And so the beginning of the room of letters in the house began when I wanted Dahlia, the first wife, to receive all these letters from him and make it very romantic. And I saw Dahlia with this basket of letters that she had collected. And I thought to myself, well, what is she going to do with the letters? And one of the magical things that happens when you're writing a novel is that sometimes you get this sort of flash of lightning in your head, and it's like you instantly see something unexpected. And I saw Dahlia just sort of doing this decoupage with them and putting them around the room so that she could have almost an embrace of the words of love around her, that everywhere she looked, she saw something. And so it began like that in my mind. I thought it was very poetic and visual. You know, all my books, I like to be very sensory rich, that you can see everything. But then when I got towards the end and I wanted, you know, Elodie to, you know, have a second life and a second love, and sort of, you know, that's a big theme in my books, that you can have a second love even after you have a great first love. They don't necessarily cancel each other out, but they're different and they need to be respected. And I also feel very strongly that you don't need to say the first love is bad or not as perfect. You can respect them in parallel. I think that's very important. So I didn't want Elodie to feel that she needed to take the letters down that had been Dahlia's. I wanted there to be a respect. And so Little Prince taking the papers to do that and putting that, building upon that, to me became this sort of merging of histories, of journeys that both characters had, and a mutual respect. And I could visualize it in almost like a map of one's journey in life through love. So to me, that was where that came from.
Okay.
Alyson, thank you very much. My special moment was to be in the Elodie concert, to listen in the show.
Okay. Oh, wonderful.
Thank you very much.
My husband plays the violin very, very well. My daughter plays the violin and the viola. And I met many cellists to do this research. So it was wonderful to get guidance on how to create that, and also to interview musicians of what it's like when you're immersed in the music, you know, and you're, you know, that mental state of playing. I love doing that research and learning from other artists, creative artists that are musicians.
Thank you.
Talking about the music, that was another language inside this novel. Did you choose this part of symphonies of Haydn and Borak to try to understand how they use in reality this code of music, or you can imagine because they use the cello in some of the parts of that symphony?
Well, actually, I did not pick those pieces of music. I had musicians pick them for me because of the opportunity to have cadenzas in them, and I was told that with cadenzas there's more freedom to do certain things, and so because the cadenza opened up this opportunity for some sort of original playing, I used it there. But it didn't, I didn't have enough musical knowledge to do that. I had to look for experts to give me guidance and help me, you know, basically use the correct language of how to describe what she would have done.
And the people that you interview that are a part of the resistance tell you that in some part of the world they use it, the music, just like a code, because it was so interesting because of the cadence and the rhythm, and they used to these notes to send some instructions about the places or another things.
Well, the messengers in the resistance that I interviewed, they were not musicians. They weren't, I didn't meet musicians that were alive who were in the resistance. I met ones who used books, who used other forms to communicate the codes. But the first example of musical codes used in resistance I learned about was Josephine Baker, the singer and dancer. She put through notes in her sheet music, there were codes for the resistance. And so at the end of her, it was usually done in invisible ink. And then with her uric acid, they could reveal the hidden notes on the sheet music. But there's a lot of material about that she used her sheet music for that. And then there were other examples of people who did other ways of writing notes upside down or using the letters in the notes, but I wanted it to be that you could hear it. And so that I basically created, you know, that the cadenza part is Elodie's own. It wasn't anyone that was based on fact, but Josephine Baker was the first musical person who I learned who was in the resistance and who was using music to help. And that just sort of opened everything up for me.
Yeah, it was so interesting, no? Because the music was formed by mathematics,
right?
And this kind of code was so amazing. I love one of my best moments of the novel was the part when Elodie was touching the partiture, no, and feeling this kind of language. You use the music by another language to tell us this amazing history, and by the other way, you use the food again. You use the cuisine to show us the beautiful senses of the lemons. What kind of sense do you like to show to the people that read this book?
Well, it's very important to me in all of my books to have them be very sensory rich, that when you're opening up a page of an Alyson Richman novel, that you can smell the flowers, you can feel the grass beneath your feet, you can see the bougainvillea flowers, when she's eating the sfogliatelle lemon ricotta pastry, that you can taste the lemon zest and connect it with the lemon trees that are outside, in the garden. So I feel that food is also another language that we express ourselves in that isn't words. When you're trying to show love and affection, Elodie's mother, how she cooks, Dahlia cooking, all of those things I think are a sign of love, and I wanted them to feel almost like a warm embrace in the book. But I always try and put all these details of the flowers, the perfume, the food, the colors, so that you're walking almost like in a painting, but one that you can also, inhale the fragrances and taste the things that I describe. That's my hope, that I paint a very, special picture for you, that you're immersed in that world.
Yeah, and you made us to search more about it, the stracciatella and limoncello, and the kind of the different lemons that they have in Italy, and we go through an immense voyage, no? And by the other side, for me, one of the awful moments of the novel was the time when Elodie goes through the frontier and some German touch her violoncello. That's so awful, and
it was meant to feel like a violation, you know, like it's a violation of her. Because
yeah.
The cellist that I interviewed told me how the cello becomes an extension of the body, you know, that it's, and even when you begin learning the cello, you're supposed to caress the curves and you're supposed to, you know, hold it tightly to your chest or between your legs. And this sense of that it is, you know, when you're using the bow, it's almost, we, you know, say balletic, like a ballet, that it's coming from your arm and you're moving in this way. And so the touch of the cello to her feels like almost it's touching her body. It's such a violation. It's supposed to feel like that. So I'm glad you did feel it.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
It's a bad scene. It's a bad. Yes.
Yeah, I interviewed a musician and they told us the same thing. The musicians have to have a very closer relationship, just like another person, another part of her body, because they have to understand so deepest the rhythm and the kind of the violin or the violoncello, no?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely, they do. So I wanted to, you know, I wanted to convey that in the book about, you know, how such a deep connection. And when she loses the cello, it feels like a loss of self. You know, it's a part of herself. So, and also the cello itself, you know, it's a go thriller. It has its own sort of storyline, and that's a very rare type of cello, and the history of it has all been researched. I wanted to share that with my readers. The very red varnish is very particular to it. But I wanted to add the instrument to have a backstory too, to make it, you know, how did she come to have this, you know, special cello?
Leon was the first owner, no, of this violoncello.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Danny, do you want to ask some more things? ¿Quieres preguntar algo más, Danny?
No, está bien, Angie, gracias.
Okay, and the final, do you think, for me, the final was a little bittersweet because I want to know more what happened with both, no, with the doctor and Eloise. Do you think that the readers wants to know more, or you say that's done? I finish with a lovely story, and
So,
that's the end.
you know, all of my stories end with a opening. They don't end with everything wrapped up in a bow where you know everything. Because personally, I don't like those type of stories that wrap everything up and all the loose ends are tied. I like stories that I answer the original question that motivated me to write the novel, which was how do we communicate without the use of words? What connects us, you know, rather than divides us? These are themes that I'm very passionate about exploring in my books. But I also want to bring you to a point at the end of the novel, just like I did in Los Amantes de Praga, where the characters are about to embark on a new life. And we don't know what that new life is, but we know in our heart that they're filled with love and hope and that they're meant to be together. And so I want my readers to imagine what comes next so that the story is infinite. It has so many different beautiful possibilities rather than being finite and you know in a concrete way, like you know, what happens at the end. So it's really for me an invitation. It's almost like a dance where then this person opens up their hand and says, and now it's the next dance, and you imagine what happens. Certainly, I hope as an author, I'm not bringing to a point that you have questions that you don't think that they end up together. I want to suggest a happy ending, but I don't necessarily feel compelled that I have to be very trite and sort of tell you every single thing. I feel the reader-author partnership is very special, that I give you the tools that you know these characters' hearts and their souls, and you know, and you can sort of continue with them in the next chapter, how you imagine it.
Yeah, we find the novel with hope, with
Yes.
tons of hope. Thank
Yes.
you, Alyson. And Danny, the last.
So for the final question, my mom would like to know from this book specifically, who was your favorite character? Just making, or was it Elodie, or would you say?
I think my favorite character was the wolf. You know, the character, he's a bit mysterious, and the last you see of him with his, you know, with his shackles on his feet, you know, I loved writing that character. So it's probably a strange answer that of all the characters, he's my favorite, but I feel that I love that he's sort of this shadowy question mark of what happens to him. And I love how he appears and disappears and then reappears. So I think he's my favorite character. Yes.
Danny?
Thank you. For me too.
Okay, good, wonderful.
Well, we are going to go to the final, and thanks a lot, Alyson, to ever take a part, just a little time to talk with us, where your amazing novels.
Oh.
We love the way that you write, and we hope that we have another chance to talk more about another novels. I know that you are writing you publish just right now another novel in English, no?
Yes. It's called The Thread Collectors. It takes place in the 1800s during the Civil War in the United States, about a Black Union soldier and a Jewish Union soldier, their lives colliding, and an unexpected friendship between these two men on the battlefield, and at the same time the stories of their beloveds and how they use very resourceful ways to sort of help the Union Army and bringing their men home. So hopefully, I mean, I know it will be published in Spanish. I know Planeta will eventually, hopefully, publish it. They're in discussions now with my agent to translate that. But even more exciting is, I think, in November, you will have a new title from me that takes place in Vietnam and also in the United States. And it will be published in Spanish before English, so it's very special. And I can't wait to share that with you. I don't know what the title will be in Spanish yet, but it will have something. You'll be traveling to Vietnam, to Ireland, and also the United States in that novel. So it's a very special book to me.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Alyson. We are looking for the recently novel, but I don't know what happened with Amazon, that we don't have to.
Oh, they don't let you purchase it abroad yet?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe soon. Maybe, you know, it might have to be that it comes out. It doesn't come out to August 30th, and then maybe you can purchase it on Amazon.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. Gracias,
Okay.
Danny. Gracias,
Okay,
Alyson
thank you,
Richman.
Danny.
Un gustazo.
Okay.
Y la foto.
Sí, claro, que ya estamos llegando al final.
No,
Sí.
I don't have my book.
Don't worry. Súbelo un poquito, Dani.
Francisco, acércate.
Ok, pues
Okay.
muchas gracias. Quiero agradecer a Alyson Richman, como siempre, el poder compartir un tiempo con ella, platicar, y sobre todo también, Dani, gracias por estar y compartir esta lectura. Recuerden que esta charla la pueden ver en YouTube. Estamos en Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, y muchas gracias. Gracias a tu hijo también por la traducción, y nos estamos viendo en la próxima. Recuerden, viaja atando libros. Gracias. Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Alyson.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.